Hannah Brown, a TikToker who presented themselves as left-leaning and for the working class, and as such generated an audience of similarly leaning people, was recently spotted front row at a right-wing political rally with a speech from Trump himself, all to celebrate the life of this decade's most notorious conservative grifter, Charlie Kirk. Now, of course, this video is going to be a bit more political than usual. I say a bit, it's going to be a lot more political than usual, and I've made an effort to sort of avoid that kind of content on this channel, at least to an extent, but with the subject matter of this video, I feel as though that is kind of impossible, so get ready for that, I guess. Alright, now look, we'll start by talking about this lady Hannah Brown here, just to begin with, and then from there, we'll sort of open up and start to speak about Charlie and the funeral and all the events surrounding it and such, because Hannah Brown does set us up with some pretty good alley-oops to sort of talk about everything going on here, and why it's all just so incredibly wrong and concerning. So for reference, just to give you all the context of who she is and why people are so mad, here is a normal video from Hannah Brown's TikTok account.
Hannah, if you're about to tell me that you can't come in tomorrow, we're gonna have a real issue. Brad, I'm so sorry. I have the stomach flu. I don't think it'll be better by tomorrow. Hannah, it is unacceptable to miss 2 days of work in a row. You're gonna need a doctor's note for this.
You get the idea. That is her content. That is every video she posts. It's her sat down. There's no voice changing. There's no actor. She's wearing this exact same clothes. It's just sort of, I guess, low to medium effort comedy skit videos that are uploaded very often, which are quite popular on TikTok, right? And if that's some people's jam, I get it. Not my thing personally, but as you can see, the whole sort of gag here is that you're calling in sick to a minimum wage job, right? And the whole, I guess, concept of this account is the perspective of someone who works a minimum wage working class job, which I feel as though was largely the reason for her garnering such a left-leaning audience. Whatever the reason, it's sort of irrelevant, to be fair. The point is that her audience was, for the majority of them, were left-leaning, and as such assumed that she was similar to them in terms of thought and politics, or at least similar enough to be a fan of her. So it obviously came as quite a shock when, during the official live stream for Charlie Kirk's funeral, she was spotted, which was pointed out by many people and seen by millions. So there she is there. Again, there isn't really much to say. It's very, very simple shit going on so far. Now, this was a big deal. As you can see, she's someone with 800,000 followers. She used to have over 1 million, but because of the whole, I guess, her being spotted and also her response combined together, it led to a lot of people unfollowing her. Now, look, I've got a lot to talk about here, and I realize I've not gone too in depth yet, but don't worry, that will come. I guess we'll watch the response video and it'll sort of emerge, if that makes sense.
All right, this is the only time I'm ever going to address this. First of all, I am not MAGA. I was not at a MAGA rally.
We'll stop right there. We're gonna have to pause a lot in this video. No. You were at a MAGA rally. The whole thing was painted and camouflaged as a funeral or memorial for a brilliant American man, which we'll get onto that later as well. But no, it was a MAGA rally. We've seen the people there. There were about 100,000 people in attendance. Loads of them had MAGA hats on. They were all Trump supporters. I say all because there were there is a statistically insignificant amount of people at that rally who weren't Trump supporters. You're getting speeches from some of the biggest conservatives on the planet right now, one of which being Donald Trump himself. There also weren't even any pictures of Charlie Kirk, which for a funeral, I mean, you'd sort of be expecting that. There was literally nothing about this memorial/funeral that painted the picture of a memorial/funeral. For you to paint it out as just a funeral or memorial, I think is incredibly disingenuous and directly plays into the propaganda that they're trying to sell to people. Charlie Kirk's memorial was a right-wing political rally, and that's that really.
I went to a memorial for Charlie Kirk, a man who was brutally assassinated.
Okay, again, we'll stop right there. I don't like the use of the word brutally. It's redundant. He was just murdered, like every other person who has ever been murdered. When you put the word brutally before assassinated, it feels as though you're trying to make us feel more sympathetic or feel worse for the man who was murdered. I think killing and violence and murder and assassinations are horrific, virtually by definition. I know it seems pedantic, but to call it brutal is really manipulative in my opinion. Especially because when you think about it, there couldn't really be a more painless way of leaving the planet than what Charlie did. The guy was gone before he even knew he was shot. There was no pain, there was probably no realization, he was just murdered.
A man who has a wife and children who will never get to see him again. And despite our differing beliefs, a man who did not deserve to die.
And now this rhetoric here is one of my biggest issues with the Charlie Kirk discourse on the internet that I've witnessed, right? And that is the concept of people deserving to die, whether or not Charlie Kirk deserved to die. Because for me, asking a binary question such as, does X deserve to die? X, obviously in this case being Charlie Kirk, implies that every single human on the planet can be separated separated into categories of deserves to die and doesn't deserve to die. When for me, life is never that black and white, and it isn't really on us to choose what people deserve. If everybody thinks that the mindset of giving people what they deserve is normal and good, all that does, in my opinion, is lead to a country of punitive and retributive thinking. That is what leads to things like the death penalty, for example, which I don't agree with for a multitude of reasons, or even gun violence. The idea that people are getting what they deserve. And this is where I definitely start to lose people, because if someone asks, did Charlie Kirk deserve to die? And I refuse to answer the question, then people are going to assume for me. They'll go, oh, well, anything that isn't a no is just a yes, or anything that isn't a yes is a no. But if you think I mean yes and someone else thinks I mean no, well, you can't both be right, so it just doesn't really lead anywhere, does it? I'm allowed to completely reject the question and not think that we are in positions of power to choose what people deserve, right? Especially because whether or not he deserved to die or not is completely irrelevant to what actually happened. It's a bad line of thinking, in my opinion, that leads us to bad places. Instead, I'd be a lot more inclined to think more about, like, was this killing necessary in order for X to happen? Did Charlie Kirk need to die for Y to happen? You know, what has changed? What has been shown as a result of this murder, and is it good or bad? And when I say good or bad, I mean, will it lead to better living conditions? You know, will the killing of Charlie Kirk reduce or increase harm? Like, if you're someone, for example, who lives with the mindset of no one deserves to die like that, then a lot of people are going to come to you with names where it is pretty difficult to say that they didn't deserve to die. So, oh, no one deserves to die like that. Okay, well, what about, I don't know, Chairman Mao? Or the obvious one, what about Adolf Hitler, right? There aren't many people, in my opinion, who do believe in deserving that wouldn't say those two don't deserve to die. So, okay, the line is somewhere between Charlie Kirk and Chairman Mao. So where exactly is the line? It's impossible to say. That's why I think it's a lot more healthy to just get rid of the concept of deserving completely. Instead, we should definitely be thinking about why it happened, was it necessary, and what can we do to prevent it in the future. I think trapping people into binary questions and demanding a yes, a no, or an I don't know doesn't get us anywhere. It's incredibly unproductive.
I agree with a lot of what Charlie believed. Do I think that means he should be shot and killed? No. And if you disagree with that, we truly have nothing in common. I was so disturbed last Wednesday when I opened TikTok and had to watch the video of him being assassinated, and even more disturbed when I opened the comments and all of them were celebrating and rejoicing his death.
Now look, I'll be real, I don't agree with the celebration of the murder of Charlie Kirk, especially because I think my biggest complaint with it was that I think it to be quite hypocritical, especially if you are someone who is in favor of more gun control, because I don't think you can do both. I don't think you can celebrate the murder of Charlie Kirk via gun and also call for more gun control at the same time. That being said, a lot of the people celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk are being seen as like disgusting wee cretins, especially from, there are a lot of people, I'm not going to name names or say groups even, but like, I wouldn't even go that far. I'm not going to sit here and say that I have no idea why people are celebrating. I have no idea why some people are a little bit happy that it's happened. Don't get me wrong, you definitely won't see me celebrating the death anywhere, but I get it. The guy was partaking in large-scale political activism and propagandistic ideas based on false information and false facts to mislead people into believing what he believed. I don't even know if he believed it or if he really was just that much of a shill. And said beliefs at their very core do nothing but protect and increase the value of the fat cats at the top, most of which are obviously straight white men, and leave pretty much everyone else in worse positions. He was one of the biggest proponents for the fascist state that America is becoming and already has become in history. I mean, the last moments that the bloke spent on this planet were trying to shit on trans people for school shootings, when out of the over 5,000 school shootings that have happened in America over the last 20 years, only 4 of them have been from trans people. It's an incredibly sad and depressing existence. That is how Charlie Kirk chose to lead his life. A propagandistic shill for a fascist state. And yeah, when someone like that dies, people are going to celebrate. And once again, I'm not one of those people. I don't agree with those people, but I understand those people.
To align myself with any political views or to make a political statement, I went to pay my respects to a human that died. And everybody that is attacking me for going to a memorial, Really listen to that and think how insane that sounds.
But why Charlie Kirk, though? If you want to pay your respects to a human that died, why, of all the humans that are dying constantly, would you choose Charlie Kirk, who is once again one of the biggest driving factors and proponents for the fascist state that you are currently living in? Someone who was literally donating millions to withhold rights from women and make abortions harder to get. Someone who was actively trying to make jobs harder to obtain for people of color, purely because of their skin color. Someone who cried tears of joy when a literal rapist was elected President of the United States of America. Of all the people to pay respects to after their death, why choose him? So many people have pointed this out, and I know a lot of people will look at it as sort of virtue signaling and just classic wokeism, but I really do agree. It's like, there are so many people dying of causes that are so much more sympathetic than what happened to Charlie. You know, all the men, women, and children dying constantly in Gaza, for example, Sudan, Congo, or even in your own country with all the school shootings that are happening constantly, or even the immigrants that are being forcefully kicked out of your country and put into camps in Sudan, many of which with no due process, many of whom are now dead. You've not mourned for any of these people, but Charlie Kirk, he gets a good morning, doesn't he? It's just very difficult to believe that you don't at least somewhat, to an extent, align with his views when of all the people on the fucking planet who have died, you choose to mourn him. And also, it's not like you live where she had to drive 13 hours to get there. It's not a cheap expense. I'm sure there was a lot of things that had to be done. It's not an easy thing to do, to go to a memorial for someone 13 hours away from where you fucking live. Did you have to pay to enter? I'm not sure, so I'm not gonna make the claim, but like, I don't know, man. It's all just so difficult to believe. Also, I should probably address the claim that he was making jobs harder to obtain for people of color, because I mentioned it earlier. So here's one of the many clips where he tells the insane lie that it's actually easier to get employed if you're black, and uses this as evidence for white privilege not existing.
What evidence do you have that I'm a racist?
I was just literally watching a video of you talking about whiteness as a whole, talking about whiteness as a concept, okay? And you were trying to explain how white privilege doesn't exist.
Correct, it doesn't.
You are a white man, how do you know?
Because I have eyes.
Because you have eyes. That's
And
not
I
a
have
description.
reason. So what can a black person do that I can't do in America?
Black applicants to jobs are 50% less likely to get jobs with they have a black sounding name.
That's not even close to being true. That's not even close to being true.
That is a literal.
In fact, it's the
yes,
opposite. What privilege do you and I as white people have that black people don't have?
Yeah, great question. On applications that are blindly judged, white-sounding names are often given the job more. They're paid more.
Not true. In fact, it's the opposite. There's black privilege right now. It's called affirmative action.
On screen right now are just some findings from some studies over various spans of time in the last few decades that prove pretty irrefutably that merely having a black name does in fact dramatically reduce your chances of being hired when compared to identically qualified white counterparts. I will also leave 3 links in the description that you can take a look at if you're at all interested. Charlie making a call to rid of DEI and affirmative action will obviously make jobs harder to obtain for people of color, which is of course incredibly unjust and racist when it's already twice as hard for us to do so. No studies are ever cited by Charlie for these radical and false claims because he knows that they aren't true, but it's just more propaganda to prop up his white supremacist ideals and attempt to recruit others into his racist line of thinking and make life as unlivable as possible for people who are already being oppressed. And of course, in classic Charlie Kirk fashion, this clip ends with some token black lambasting the student and getting imbued by a crowd of hundreds for literally being correct.
I'm not gonna argue your lived experience. I'm not gonna, no.
See, now you have to listen to him under your rules because a black person is going to say you're wrong.
He can say I'm wrong. I know.
Come on up to the mic.
I know. I read your.
My name's Keemon Dixon. I have a really black name. Please tell me how 50% of my internships have been denied when I've worked for Senator Mike Lee, Mayor Trent Sachs, Speaker Mike Schultz.
Hold on.
I've worked for a Congressman, Burgess Owens. I've actually worked on his campaign. I've worked on the campaigns of John Huntsman Jr. Please tell me how my black experience and my black name has not given me shit. Go ahead.
So.
It's pretty difficult to prove someone wrong when they have an army of ignorant, uninformed, brainwashed idiots who worship him. Obviously, this one dude's experience does not indicate that there isn't a large-scale problem, and Charlie knows that, but I guess anecdotal evidence is only valid when it backs up the fascist lie that you're trying to tell. This one example of Charlie Kirk's white supremacist and fascist vision and ideals make this next statement from Hannah Brown, as well as many others on the right, about how Charlie Kirk was just a man with an opinion, someone who merely wanted to talk and engage in peaceful debate state, that much more insulting, ignorant, and grossly privileged and negligent.
Whether or not you agree with his political beliefs is so irrelevant. Because truly, if you are against gun violence, which why would you not be, you cannot celebrate when someone you don't like gets shot. You are a hypocrite. So if you want to unfollow me, completely fine. I would rather have 0 followers than have hundreds of thousands of people that would celebrate the death of a man who just wanted to speak.
See, right there is exactly that is the problem. That is the biggest problem with the whole Charlie Kirk discourse, is the idea that he is just a man who wanted to speak. He was killed merely for having an opinion. That is the rhetoric that many people have run with. Oh, does someone really deserve to die just for an opinion? When realistically the question should be, does someone deserve to die for large-scale propagandistic political activism that disproportionately affects people who aren't rich white men? Or even just scratch that. Does someone deserve to die for large-scale political activism that oppresses people? Because that is what was going on here. And obviously, when you make that the question, it's a lot harder to answer, right? Because there are many people who have done such things that have had deaths that many people consider to be deserving. So people don't phrase a question like that, even though that is exactly what Charlie was doing. They just soften it a little bit and bring it down to the level of, oh, just, you know, having an opinion. Just like fucking Goebbels had an opinion. Having an opinion is such a broad and vague statement that it can be applied to pretty much every murder on the fucking planet. Everyone who has been murdered was murdered for having an opinion. It's way more than just having an opinion, and for you to phrase it like that just shows how out of fucking touch you are. He did not just want to talk. He is labeled, whenever you look him up correctly, as a political activist, right? He acted. When you make political statements that lead people to believe in a certain way, they will act out that certain way. They will act out on those beliefs. Political statements lead to political actions.
It doesn't matter if they want to do good. Just send them back to their country. I mean, this is not their home. Go back to your home and go make Mexico great again.
But they can't necessarily do that while the cartels are running the government. They have no upward mobility, and we sell them the American dream.
Then go fix your country.
Because that's
not my problem.
Isn't that the point of America, to sell the American dream?
What is the point of America? Is the point to bring in a bunch of foreigners, or is the point to protect our own citizens?
When you tell the world that ICE raids are necessary to protect your own citizens, then yeah, that is going to radicalize and trick a lot of people into believing that illegal immigrants are this huge threat, this huge danger to their country, and that the ICE raids are actually a totally morally justifiable thing. It is going to perpetuate racism towards brown and black people, when in reality, those same people are only illegally immigrating to the USA because the legal immigration process is so deliberately hard, long, and arduous that no one in their right mind would do it, especially when America is deliberately inviting them into the country illegally for cheap labor, under the presupposition that they can kick them out whenever they want for illegally entering the country. These people are working seasonal jobs, many of which, I think most of them are in California. Hard, laborious jobs in the middle of the summer where they walk up to crops, bend over, pick them up, all day, every day, constantly destroying their body, having to move constantly because of the nature of the job, and being paid less than minimum wage for it. And I'm not gonna say the cliche of like, oh, they're doing the jobs that Americans don't want to do, because I don't believe that. I think Americans would do those jobs if they were paid fairly, but America doesn't want to pay those people fairly. So Americans won't do it, and more power to them. They shouldn't do it unless they were paid fairly. So they get the illegal immigrants to do it, because even though they're not being paid minimum wage even, they're still being paid more than they would have made back in Mexico. And then when you have all these ICE officers forcefully shoving them into vans and shipping them off to countries where they'll never be seen again, where they have no idea what's going to happen to them, many of which were taken without due process or any kind of legal processing whatsoever. And when you add on top of that a lot of it is being recorded, and of course a lot of them are of course struggling, trying to resist being forcefully taken away from their families, which is then being used to further paint the narrative that they're violent brutes, when who in their right mind wouldn't fight back, when the alternative is not knowing what the fuck is going to happen to you or your family, when many people who have already been taken have died. And then you add on top of that the people doing these raids have quotas to fill, so they have all the reason in the world to take innocent immigrants and ship them away without due process to fill their quotas, because if they don't, Donald Trump fucking fires them, which has happened. ICE officers have in fact been fired for not filling their quotas. So of course, they're going to fill them by any means necessary, even if that means going to churches, going to friendly neighborhoods, right? Going anywhere where they can find these immigrants. I got a comment once when I displayed some sort of, I guess, disagreement with the ICE raids, and I remember thinking thinking, because in the comment they said, like, my sister was murdered by an illegal immigrant, and all I could think was, like, that's horrible, obviously, and you cannot feel worse for someone than when something like that happens, but those murderers and rapists aren't the ones being caught by the ICE officers. Murderers, rapists, high-level criminals are difficult to find. They don't attend church. The people being used to fill these quotas are normal illegal immigrants who have been invited into the country for cheap labor. People who are less likely to commit a crime than almost any other demographic, because if they do, and they get caught for being an illegal immigrant, they're fucked. Illegal immigrants are some of the least likely people to commit crimes in the entire country. But Charlie Kirk would never tell you that because he is a white supremacist and he wants them gone. It's so much more than just having an opinion or wanting to speak. So can we please stop framing it like that's all he was doing?
That there is nothing you can take from me that matters. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. Jesus is king, and thank you so much to everyone that is still supporting me and defending me. I love you so much and I appreciate you. And for the people who are attacking me or unfollowing me, I love you too. One
of the most insufferable things that a creator or influencer can say, in my opinion, is I love everyone, including my haters. It just goes to show how much of a, almost said the C word there, but how much of a twat you are. You're just a unlikable individual. Like, no one likes that sort of fucking attitude, man. It's just so grim. Always watch out for influencers who say that sort of shit. Like, oh, I love my haters. It's like, fuck off. Just stop lying or stop acting like a twat. It's also pretty difficult to say that you don't align yourself with him, with his views when you have reposts comparing him to Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Like, look, this is a repost here. Like, look, I'm going on here. Look at this. Hannah Brown reposts, and then you go here, and it's Jesus Christ. Oh, it's just maybe she's very Catholic, right? Let's go on it.
If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belonged to the world,
and you've got R.I.P. Charlie there. And look, everyone here is Jesus Christ, Hannah Brown, what a monumental disappointment. Which, I mean, yeah, I understand why people think that. If I was a fan of Hannah Brown, then I'd be disappointed. But imagine if I was caught at Charlie Kirk's funeral. I'm pretty sure yous would all be pretty fucking disappointed, and rightly so. Like, the whole funeral was a complete fucking propagandistic farce. It wasn't a funeral, it was a means of taking the murder of Charlie Kirk and using it as a manipulation tactic to attempt to recruit more right-wing grifters and believers and voters for Republicans. That's why they had Erica Kirk come up on stage and say that she forgives the shooter. There's nothing genuine about that, in my opinion. She's now just a grieving widow who is being exploited by Donald Trump to recruit more Republicans and make them believe that they are this generous, forgiving people, and paint the left out to be the violent brutes. See, we on the right, we forgive people, we forgive killers. The left, they kill people. If you look at the numbers from the last 20 years, 50 years even, they say everything we need to know about what side of the political fence does more violence. Especially because we don't even know for sure whether or not the murderer was on the left or right, which a lot of people dispute that, and they say, no, we know, he was definitely a leftist. Well, it's like, no, how do you know that? He could have been a leftist, he could have been a groyper, he grew up in a conservative Christian family and only recently moved out, I think. He was only 22 years old. And on top of that, I think the most important thing to remember is that if he was right-wing, I don't think we will ever know about that. There is no way we are being let in on that information. There is no way they'd hold that entire memorial service. Trump would go on stage, say he hates his opponents, wants the worst for them, which, by the way, if you want the worst for your opponents are half the fucking country. It's a bit of a dumb thing for the President of the United States of America to say that he wishes the worst for half of the United States of America. But yeah, there's no way they'd put all the money and time and thought into that and manipulation and propaganda into all that just to let us in on the fact that he was right-wing, which I'm not even sure of, just to be clear. Like, he genuinely could have just been a left-wing murderer. But again, the most important thing from there is that even if he was a leftist, that is one leftist out of half the fucking country, roughly, that decided to pick up a gun and shoot Charlie Kirk, when exactly 0 of the tens of millions of other leftists in the country decided to do the same thing. This is one person. He does not represent an entire political group. And using this one instance as like a clear example of why the left is more violent is incredibly disingenuous and manipulative. And also completely ignores all of the political violence done by the right in recent years. I mean, it was just earlier this year that a right-wing murderer killed the Democratic Melissa Hortman and her husband, which is an assassination with double the death toll and not even half the media coverage or sympathies. And also no condemnation from any right-wing grifters, including Trump himself, who didn't even pretend to care. The left have been notoriously peaceful in their protests, actually, even the biggest ones. There was definitely a little bit of unrest when BLM had a resurgence after George Floyd's death, but again, that is just nothing compared to the hundreds of other examples of right-wing violence over the last 20 years. It's also interesting that the majority of the violence that America has had to endure in the last 15 years or so has been under Trump. 7 out of 10 of America's biggest protests ever have been under Trump. This killing was a result of the fascist state that Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump are working so hard to uphold and make more fascist. When you're living under fascism, things like this will end up happening, and when America stops being a fascist state, which it will eventually, the one constant thing on this planet is change, so one day it will happen, probably within our lifetimes, hopefully sooner rather than later, but whatever, whenever it does end up happening, Charlie Kirk will just be remembered as one of the many right-wing grifter propagandistic idiots. This good Christian man who just wanted to talk label that many are giving him won't uphold in a matter of years. And I've not even brought up the fact that he himself famously said that gun deaths are necessary in America to maintain, or that it's a worthy sacrifice for people to own and have control over their weaponry.
You're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. You can significantly reduce them. We should have an honest and clear reductionist view of gun violence, but we should not have a utopian one. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year.
So, okay, gun deaths are a necessary evil in America, and that is widely accepted by him and all his fans until he is the one that the gun violence happens to. Kind of funny how that works, isn't it? All of a sudden now, it's a tragedy and something needs to be done about it. When his solution to the problem was, quite literally, let's do fuck all. People should be dying from gun deaths. People should be getting publicly executed, which again, public execution is something that he has said should be happening.
Unwanted.
So you're comparing abortion to the Holocaust?
Absolutely I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse.
It's really not. I don't
It's
think it is.
45 million babies.
Yeah, promoting rhetoric like that goes way beyond just talking. Like, ideas that radical, that extreme, and that fucking stupid, purely for the sole purpose of controlling women's bodies and taking their rights away, you cannot chalk that up to just having an opinion. I don't think there is any reasonable argument for abortion to not be legal. Life does begin at conception, but that life is not sentient at all. A week-old fetus has no capability of feeling, there's no central nervous system, there's no capability to feel pain, there's no conscious thought going on. A week-old fetus is about as alive as a fucking carrot is. It's like, yes, there is life there, but nothing really happens if you kill it. Aborting a fetus before it develops sentience causes about as much harm as plucking a little bit of grass out of the garden. And when there is so little harm being caused by the procedure, then making it more difficult to obtain will only increase the likelihood of unsafe abortions happening. Or worst case scenario, lead to a lot of unwanted babies. Unwanted babies that aren't being taken care of because either they aren't cared for or they do not have the financial capability to take care of said children. I genuinely don't believe that there is any reasonable argument to illegalize abortion. And to claim that it's worse than the Holocaust, I don't think I even need to explain how ridiculous of a claim that is. Especially coming from someone who is self-proclaimed to have friends who have had abortions before. If you really saw it at the same level as murdering a baby, why would you have those people in your friend group? He'd always use a really cop-out answer of no, because mothers who abort their children are victims, actually. They're victims of the radicalization, of the false information being given by the... It's like, no, you're such a fucking coward. Either it's murder or it's not. Either it's just as bad as killing a baby, either it's worse than the Holocaust, or it's not. Truth is, he knew where his bread was buttered and there was no way he was going to betray that. I don't think he fucking even believed half the shit that he was spouting. He'd always talk about how black culture was a plague and that black kids shouldn't be looking up to, I don't know, role models like Nicki Minaj is the one that he brought up. You know, hip-hop was this disgusting genre of music that encouraged black fathers to leave the home. And then you'd see him in stories with Candace Owens singing entire rap songs, like with the lyrics. It does not take an insignificant amount of listening to know all of the lyrics to a song. Again, it seems pedantic. I really don't think it is.
Black culture is being held captive by influences, songs,
Which
and role models.
influences?
I mean, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B.
Okay, Nicki Minaj is causing dads dads to leave the home.
Hold on a second. I don't think that's a good role model for 18-year-old black girls. I don't.
And also, if Nicki Minaj isn't a good role model for children, which I guess it's fine to think that, then who is? Your rapist president, yeah? The guy who pushed a woman onto a wall and forcefully shoved his fingers up her and then was forced to pay millions in damages because of the that she endured at his hands and is now president of the United States. Is he the fucking role model that people should be looking up to, yeah? But yeah, that's the video. I don't even know if this is going to go up, to be honest with you. I don't even know if a large majority of what I'm saying is going to remain in this video. I'll have to see what it looks like when I get it back from the editor, but if it goes up, then hopefully you enjoyed, I suppose. I guess sort of normal, more comedic content will continue in the next one. I do not want this to be the regular thing on this channel, but, you know, this Hannah Brown shit came up and it was the big news of the week, so thought it fit the channel, I guess. See you on the next one. Bye.